My name is Jason, and this is Just Watches. All right, today we have the second of two Boldr watches that have been lent into the channel for review. This is the Boldr Field Medic in Camo Green, which is part of their Venture lineup that includes the Automatic, this Field Medic, the Wayfarer, the GMT, and finally the Rally. All these Venture watches share a similar titanium case in a variety of movement types and complications. So as always, we're going to do pros, cons, and then if I think this watch is worth the money. But before we begin, if you're enjoying the content of this channel, I invite you to subscribe. And if you like the contents of this individual video, please give it a thumbs up. Thank you so much. So a quick note on price and availability. As of this recording, this watch is available on the Boldr website, and you can pick this up for $2.99. Now, $30 of all Field Medic purchases will go towards COVID-19 related charities. So starting with the case, it's 38 millimeters in diameter, 44 millimeters lug to lug, and you notice you do have pierced lug holes. It's 12 millimeters thick, and then it has a 20 millimeter lug width opening. Now the case is completely made of titanium, and it is all finished. It almost looks like a satin finished, and I like the really dark gray color of the titanium. Now titanium is known to scratch, and this has been on a watch tour through a lot of reviewers, and you can see it's picked up a little bit of damage here, but it's actually quite hard to tell. You can see it in these bright studio lights, but you can see that it didn't really do too much damage. So however they treated this titanium, or I don't know if it's coated, but it does seem to hold up against daily wear and tear. Now, there is no mixed surfaces here. It's all the same finishing, but you do have a lot going on with different angles and chamfered edges. So the bezel has a chamfered edge all the way around, as does the side of the case. And then you have some really nice sharp angles down here on the lug. So it is still visually interesting, more based on its overall shape than a mix of different finishes on the actual metal. And then one of the main benefits of titanium, it's very light. So this comes in at a total of 55 grams, and that includes the strap. So speaking of the strap, it comes on this quite robust NATO. It's plenty long. It's 20 millimeters, stays 20 millimeters all the way down. Nice attention to detail. The hardware is also titanium with the exact same finish, and you do have a signed buckle here. And the hardware is nicely and tightly stitched in. I think overall this NATO is pretty good. It's pretty solid, pretty stiff, but I think if you wore it, it would break in really nicely. And then I think they did a great job color matching the green to some of the green elements on the dial. So then you have a screw-in case back that's going to help provide 200 meters of water resistance. And then you do have that medical symbol on the back here tying in with the whole, you'll see on the front this has a pulse meter. So tying in with that whole medical kind of doctor watch vibe, it all is kind of consistent with the case back. So this watch is powered by a VK64 Mecha Quartz. That's a quartz movement, but then it does have a mechanical chronograph function. So you'll see if we activate the chronograph, you do have somewhat of a smooth sweep with that chronograph, and then the reset function is mechanical, so it will snap back, unlike a regular quartz chronograph, which usually does a rotation all the way back to the home position. So this movement's going to be accurate to about plus or minus 20 seconds a month, and then it has a 60-minute chronograph minute totalizer on the left there, a 24-hour subregister on the right, a quick set date, and then interestingly enough, there's no running seconds on this watch, which I'll talk about more later. And then you will get about a 3-year battery life out of this movement. So the 6 millimeter screw down crown is signed with the Boldr logo, and then it's nicely knurled for operation. It has kind of a cool knurling. They cut away in the middle there, so it almost has like a left and right side. I really like how it looks. And then it does sit slightly recessed into the case when it's fully screwed down, and the screwing in and screwing out action is very smooth. So the crystal is a flat sapphire crystal, and it has been treated with anti-reflective coating, which makes it easier to read the dial. And it's just nice to see sapphire crystal used at this price point. So let's talk about this dial. It has a really cool camo pattern on it, and what I didn't notice at first, but it's obvious in the studio lights, is the different colors have different finishes. So that green has a sunburst finish, and then the blue and the gray are totally matte. So very visually interesting dial here. And then around the very edge, the chapter ring, you have the 30 pulse meter. So you will activate the chronograph and then count 30 beats of the heart, and that will tell you the heart rate on that outer ring. And then moving in from that chapter ring, you do have the 5 respiration track, so you can do the same thing, counting respirations to get a respiration rate. And then you have The hours and the minutes are designated by, you have a triangle at 12, and then there's circles for most of the other hours. Sans the 6 o'clock position, you have the date, and then of the 3 and the 9, they have the sub-register there instead. You have Boldr at 12 o'clock, Field, Medic, Venture at 6 o'clock, just the right amount of text, I think, on the middle of the dial. And then, of course, you have that 2 sub-registers. They are sunken down, which I really like, and the left side is going to be your total minutes when you're running the chronograph all the way up to 60, and the right side is just a 24-hour sub-register. So one other detail of the dial is they did color match that date wheel. That's great attention to detail. They could have just went with like a black date wheel there, but if you look very closely, it actually matches the grayish camo color on the dial, so great to see that. For the handset, we have 2 syringe hands for the hour and the minute, and they are just the right length. The hour is going right to that inner ring, and then the minute hand kind of goes all the way out to the chapter ring. You kind of give up some of the dashes for minutes when you have the pulse meter on the outer edge there, but you know, that's the main function of the watch. And then there's no second hand, so there's no running seconds on this watch. At first, I didn't know if that would bother me, but it really doesn't really bother me. I got used to it pretty quickly. The only other hand you have there is, of course, the chronograph hand. So when you activate the chronograph, that will start to go around the dial. And then, of course, you do have 2 other small hands, and those are the hands on the sub-registers. But a good handset, and because they're loomed and they contrast heavily from the dial, although the dial is busy, I have no trouble reading the time on this watch. So they did something really cool with the loom on this watch. They used 2 different colors, and they fully loomed both the tracks, the pulse meter track and the respiration track. However, the application of loom just isn't strong enough for it to be legible very long. The idea is really cool, but the execution isn't quite there. The hands are both really well loomed, and as you can see, the other Boldr Venture has really good loom. For whatever reason, the loom on the chronograph just isn't as strong. So here is the watch on my 6 3/4 inch wrist. This is going to be a perfect size watch if you have smaller wrists. It's only 38 millimeters and a very short 44 millimeter lug to lug. And then I'm not a huge NATO fan, but if you check out my review of the Venture Wayfarer, these are 20 millimeter lug width, and they do take other straps, including the Barton Elite, which is one of my favorite straps, very well. So you're going to have a lot of strap options if you're not a huge NATO fan. So pros and cons, starting with the pros. Well, with 200 meters of water resistance and a screw down crown, you don't have to worry about getting this one wet. It has a very fun set of complications, and it's still useful as a chronograph. And there's a great execution of the dial and the date window with that matching date wheel. And then of course you have a sapphire crystal, which I always like to see at this price point. For cons, and this is more of a matter of preference, but I'm not a huge NATO strap fan. As I said before, this is a 20 millimeter lug width, so you're going to have a lot of options as far as that goes. And then secondly, the idea of the loom was really cool, but the application isn't strong enough for it to be useful. So is this watch worth the money? Well, when I think of Mecha Quartz, a couple other brands pop into my head. Dan Henry makes a number of Mecha Quartz watches in the mid to high 200s, but they mostly use mineral crystal, so paying a bit more and getting a sapphire crystal is worth it to me. And then I recently reviewed the Nezumi Mecha Quartz, and that watch was $360, and it did also have a sapphire crystal, but it had lower water resistance. So I think this Boldr is competitively priced, considering the sapphire crystal and 200 meters of water resistance. So if you like the design and style of this watch, I think the value is there. So there you have it, the Boldr Venture Field Medic Mecha Quartz in the camo colorway. Let me know what you guys think about this watch in the comments below. As always, if you're enjoying the content of this channel, I invite you to subscribe. And if you like the contents of this individual video, please give it a thumbs up. That's it for this time. My name is Jason, and you have been watching Just Watches.